Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, I think we are ready to go. Thank you again for being here. Today's presentation is going to be on the pros and cons of Microsoft Endpoint Manager. My name's Heidi Flagg, and I will be your MC today. And to kick things off, I'll do a few introductions here. We all have our webcams on. You can see we're all remote working right now. We have a special guest with us today. You've likely seen his articles through the years on Windows IT Pro magazine, Petrie's Ask the Admin column, or perhaps you've even read his book on Windows security. We're really pleased to welcome Russell Smith as our special guest today.
Hi.
And then we have quite a few members from the Smart to Play team as well. We have Smart to Play CEO Aaron Suzuki.
Hello, everyone.
Our General Manager, Spencer Dunford.
Hey, everybody.
Support Manager, and you may have also seen him on our YouTube channel. He's all over our YouTube channel, Jeff Harris.
Hello.
Our CTO, Alan Marsh.
Hello.
And Director of Systems Engineering, Eric Nymark.
Hello, everyone.
So we're really excited about the presentation today. Just to give you a rundown of what we'll be talking about, Aaron's going to kick things off with an overview of the current IT conditions in the workplace, and our guest Russell will dive into the details of Microsoft's repackaging of SCCM and Autopilot and Intune. These were all announced last year into this Microsoft Endpoint Manager umbrella. Spencer's going to share insights from a recent product comparison report published by G2, and then Jeff will show us a quick tour of the Smart to Play product and show you how you can centrally manage endpoints no matter where they are. After that, we will announce today's raffle winner. We have a Smart to Play Pro Forever subscription for 25 machines that we will be giving away to one attendee. And after that, we'll jump into Q&A. So we have some time set aside at the end for Q&A. If questions come up throughout the presentation, feel free to send those through the questions section here within GoToWebinar. And then if you get pulled away for any reason today, we are recording this event, and you can watch your inbox later this week for a link to the recording. With all of that out of the way, I think we're ready to kick things off, and I will hand things over to Aaron.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. Thanks for making time to join us. We have all these people who have attended today, partly because we want this to be a authentic discussion, and we know that most of our customers and people like you are actual IT doers. So we want the people who are authoritative, Russell, Jeff, Eric, Alan, all to be available to answer questions to the specific things that you're going to ask. We work in this really technically complex part of the industry, and sometimes it feels a little lonely. Maybe people don't really appreciate how complicated our jobs are, and we understand that, and we try really hard to be responsive and available to that. And so that's part of the reason we bring all these people out to these otherwise pretty two-dimensional webcasts. So looking forward to hearing everyone's questions and things. But I think the background we want you guys to know is that we are kind of a single-purpose organization. We set out to solve a very specific problem. And the reason we did that is we saw that it was not being done very well, that the problem was never solved in a way that made it really easy for people to do consistently well. And you might argue, for those of you who are attending who are maybe using System Center or have for a long time and are trying still to figure out what the heck's going on, or are interested in System Center but don't really understand it and say, wow, this looks complex, or maybe don't like System Center and say, wow, it'd really be great if I knew more about what else was out there. That there is sort of this other way, and we'll talk more about that as we go on, but we really are trying to make a very specific set of outcomes happen, which is to make this job much easier for people just like you. And we have lots and lots and lots of customers throughout the world doing all kinds of things with this product, pushing it in new ways, driving it into larger organizations more than ever. And so we're very hands-on in our approach, both in the way that we build the product and the way that we entertain customer feedback, as well as the way that we do support and things like that. And again, our work today is sort of more evidence of that, I think. Over time, The job has changed, though, of course. And with COVID and all of the things going on, we moved from this old way of being sort of in a single location or a couple locations to being very, very distributed. So, Jeff, if you want to go to the next slide, I think we have a little depiction of that. Sort of this view, this changing worldview. And we were already on this road long before COVID struck. And now it is even more the norm, right? And so there are all kinds of crazy implications, and I'll leave some of the detailed discussion to Russell to explore. But what we've tried to do, because we're an independent organization, we're not beholden to the market or to a private equity firm, we're really trying to make this ideal for the average organization that still has a HQ, still has branch offices, but now has many people working from home. Again, it will return eventually to having lots of salespeople out on the road, and all those devices need to be managed. You these days may never see those devices or those people, but we still have to address them and manage them professionally. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with Smart Deploy, is make that more addressable and easier to do in this modern way of not necessarily ever being on the local area network. Rarely, if ever, seeing these people are having their devices directly connected to the network, whether by VPN or the local area network. And so by doing this, we hope that we're not only making it easier to address the change in devices, but the change in the use case, right? And of course, the change in devices is profound too, because now all of our PCs are more like mobile devices where we have so many sensors and, you know, so many ways to connect: Wi-Fi, wired, Bluetooth. All of those things require more device drivers, which makes the job of deployment more complicated. The number of devices we're supporting is also multiplying because of the acceptance of BYO, or simply the more numerous devices that are available in the market for that matter. So the job is getting harder, and the solutions aren't necessarily improving or keeping pace with that. And so that's part of what we're trying to address today is, how's Microsoft doing it? How good of a job are they doing it? And what are the pros and cons? And we have this discussion as a friend of Microsoft. We certainly don't have hostility. I know that many of our customers use Smart Deploy in concert with System Center, for example, but increasingly we're finding customers like using it standalone as well. We see ourselves sort of in this unusual category. And there are very highly sophisticated solutions that do a lot, but also have a lot of complexity associated. Workspace ONE, very powerful if you use it. Allows you to do VDI, allows you to do MDM and all these things, but it requires a lot of infrastructure, a lot of team to manage it. We all know about SCCM, which is what we're here to talk about, or at least enough, and Russell will enlighten us further. A lot of us know about MDT and CloneZilla, technically free solutions, but require a lot of legwork to get up and running. And then other solutions that are simple, point solutions that seem to work pretty well, but are relatively limited in scope. Smart Deploy is in this unique situation where we work from the cloud, and we're designed to work from the cloud with fewer requirements than the competition without sacrificing security. We work with a variety of different cloud storage providers and offer a lot of flexibility that we think is unique. So again, invite you to take a look at Smart Deploy more closely, and hopefully the coming discussion is going to be insightful. So on that note, Russell, I'll turn the time over to you to talk more about exactly what's going on in this wild world of Microsoft and the way that they're changing things with Endpoint Manager, Config Manager, Autopilot, Intune, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So take it away. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm already confused by all of those terms. So much complexity there in the Microsoft world. So Microsoft Endpoint Manager, for those who don't know, was announced at Ignite back in September 2020. And it incorporates two main products. So as Aaron was mentioning there, it incorporates what was previously called System Center Configuration Manager, which has been around for years, and it's Microsoft's, well, originally on-premises solution for managing Windows clients and servers, so deploying them, the operating system and software and configuration management. And Endpoint Manager now also incorporates Microsoft's mobile device management platform called Intune. Now, this is a service that's based in the Azure cloud, and it's for managing cloud native devices, things like Windows PCs, tablets, Android, all that kind of stuff. Now, what you can see on the slide here is a high-level, simplified overview of Endpoint Manager. So you've got those two main components, Configuration Manager on one side and Intune on the other. But Endpoint Manager also incorporates a lot of other technologies, things that didn't really fit in anywhere before. And Microsoft has brought everything together under this one brand name or umbrella, if you like, to simplify the technology and the story a little bit as far as licensing is concerned. So in addition here, we have things like desktop analytics, and we have Windows Autopilot, and many other technologies there which are not included on the slide, but it gets complicated very quickly. Now, because of the complexity involved in Endpoint Manager, it's something that you're going to need experienced people to manage hands-on. And if you're an organization that just has one or two IT people, then this is likely something that's going to be difficult to set up and manage, because you need a small team of people to set up and manage Endpoint Manager going forwards. So what about the licensing story? So Microsoft is trying to simplify licensing with Endpoint Manager, but it's still complicated, of course, because everything with Microsoft licensing is complicated. So moving everything under this umbrella, the situation now is that those organizations that have an existing System Center Configuration Manager license are now able to use Intune in Windows co-management scenarios. And vice versa, organizations that have Intune can now use Configuration Manager. So Endpoint Manager comes bundled with various different subscription plans, and it can be quite difficult to work out what you get and when you get it and when you can use it, how many devices you can use to use those things to manage. So it comes, for instance, with some plans, some Microsoft 365 plans, 365 plans. It comes with some EMS plans, and of course, it's all a little bit complicated, as always with Microsoft. Now, the plan that Microsoft has in terms of promoting Endpoint Manager is to try and convince organizations that they're not going to phase out their Configuration Manager product. So there's been a trend over the last few years that Microsoft has been pushing organizations to use their modern management, so things like Autopilot, their modern management cloud-based services. And some organizations have been a little bit concerned that Microsoft is going to eventually phase out the kind of traditional on-premises configuration manager solution. But part of this move to endpoint management is to kind of convince organizations, no, we're not planning to phase out Configuration Manager, and Endpoint Manager now encompasses all of the things that you have been used to using and all of this modern management technology, and now you can essentially use them either separately or together and mix and match everything as you like. Now that is the official line right now, of course, but what happens in 5-10 years time, of course, is anybody's guess. Now, there are two main options with the Configuration Manager platform for managing devices in the cloud. Now, of course, Configuration Manager was designed, in the days where everything was essentially behind a corporate firewall, and maybe you would just have a handful of devices connecting in with a VPN or something like that. Now, the first option is called Cloud Management Gateway, or CMG for short. And this is probably the preferred option. Now, this is deployed in the Azure cloud, and basically it acts as a middleman between your on-premises configuration manager servers and your endpoints that are based on the internet. Now, it can be used to manage Windows endpoints, and it requires Windows Server Active Directory. Now, if those devices are joined to Windows Server Active Directory, you're also going to need a PKI, public key infrastructure, set up to deploy certificates so that those devices can securely connect to your on-premises configuration manager servers. If your endpoints are hybrid join to Azure Active Directory, so they're joined to Windows Server Active Directory and also registered with Azure Active Directory, then you can do away with the public key infrastructure, and then you don't need it in that case. Now, there are quite a lot of limitations with the Cloud Management Gateway solution, in that it doesn't support all of the features of Configuration Manager. So things off the top of my head, it doesn't support software approvals and things like that. It doesn't support Mac OS, it's just for Windows devices. So there are some limitations with Cloud Management Gateway. The other option that you have is internet-based client management. Now, this works differently in that you don't need a middleman, so you don't need Microsoft's cloud service. And of course, some organizations don't want to use cloud services at all. And internet-based client management allows your remote endpoints on the internet to connect directly to your configuration manager servers on your corporate network. Now, the big disadvantage of this system is that while your endpoints get a direct connection to Configuration Manager, because of that direct connection, you're going to need to make sure your Configuration Manager servers are internet facing. So they need to be in a DMZ, and that of course brings its own complications, and it increases risk, and it also means that you're going to have to put in more infrastructure to make sure that everything is secure. So for instance, you're definitely going to need a public key infrastructure to make sure that certificates are deployed everywhere so that you can secure those communications between your internet endpoints and your configuration manager servers. So both options, whether it's the CMG option or the internet-based client management solution, both have their advantages and disadvantages. Now, there's also a third way, or kind of homegrown solutions, as I like to call them. And that is using a scripting solution like PowerShell and package managers like Chocolatey. And these can work well in situations where everything is on the corporate internet. So the devices that you want to manage and your management workstations are all located on the one network. And in principle, it works fine. The problem with these solutions is that they don't scale well when you've got hundreds or thousands of users maybe who are remote working on the internet. There is one exception to that, of course. If you have a VPN that's configured for manage out scenarios, then in principle you can use these scripting solutions. But they do have other disadvantages, of course, because they're custom solutions, if you like. They can work well maybe if you just have one or two IT guys who know how to work with them. But once you've got a small team of people, or once you've got more than just a handful of endpoints that you need to manage, then these custom solutions don't really work very well. And of course, you're better off using a solution like that provided by Smart Deploy, or if you're a large enterprise, something like Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So Jeff, if you could advance to the next slide, if we're not already there. Yes, we're already there. Sorry, go back one slide.
Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. My apologies.
Slide deck, yep. So Endpoint Manager is great for larger organizations if you have the resources to work with it. But it is complex. It's not something that one guy can set up in a weekend. It requires specific skills and a team of people to manage it ongoing, of course. The licensing, while simpler, is still complex. And you do have those two solutions for extending Configuration Manager out to your remote endpoints, but they both have their pros and cons, so you need to look at both of those. Okay, so I'm going to hand over now to Spencer.
Got it. Thank you so much. Next slide there, Jeff. Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody, for taking the time and attention here today. I just wanted to introduce the idea that this discussion is not about whether the Microsoft stack can work or work well. It can work extremely well. It's just the devil's in the details, and you need to align your organizational needs and your project needs to what makes the most sense for you. We hear a lot of customers where their backs are up against the wall and they need to quickly spin something up and knock out a project. We had a customer that was a hospital that had an emergency issue that was treating COVID that needed to image over 400 computers at a moment's notice over a weekend, and their current plans fell through. They found us on the internet on a weekend. They picked up the free trial and they imaged all of those computers, even on our trial software, with no assistance from our organization in any way. So I think that's just kind of an illustration of, if you were planning on doing that with the Microsoft stack, there's a lot of homework that goes into understanding what each product is and does, and where the interfaces are between Endpoint Manager and Intune and MDT and WDS and the alphabet soup. How does that play out in terms of your product licensing? And do you have an E3 or an E5 agreement, so licensing is already ready to go? Do you need to involve your partner to help you get your licensing all sorted out, etc.? So there's just a cascading set of effects that your team has to be bought in on, from management all the way down to the implementation teams, to be able to deliver on these projects in short timelines that are sometimes demanding. Now, if you have a longer tail and you have many team members and you want to plan this out, and it's calculated and it's a longer term plan for you, those are things to add to the checklist and help evaluate, is this the right thing for me, or do I need to be looking at something else, or is there a hybrid model that you want to go through and use that? Next slide would be great, please. The other piece is seemingly trying to understand the Microsoft ecosystem and understand which product does what is one layer of the so-called onion, but the other piece is how to use it. And seemingly TechNet does more and more on what things are and documenting what they are as opposed to how they work or how to use them. So more and more we hear from customers that are turning to third-party sources, hoping they're authoritative or trustworthy enough to be able to trust them and go down the path of trying to implement scripts and guidance that other IT pros are communicating through into the IT community, and trying to use those and make all this stuff work. So it's really dependent on, on the flip side of that, with Smart Deploy, Jeff's all over the place on YouTube. You submit a ticket, you get people to help you through things. As Jeff will show you, things are generally wizard driven and industry best practices are baked in, and we're trying to give you something out of box that does the majority or a big bulk of what you would want from some of these other products without the complication. That's really what it comes down to. They're not parity for parity products, and nor would you ever expect them to be. Microsoft has an impossible job where they have to support everybody all over the planet. So their solution stack therefore needs to be not very deep right out of box, but extremely broad to cover every single scenario. So if you're one of these large organizations with the resources and the time to go and dedicate it, and the team that can learn it and set it up and maintain it and architect it, maybe that's the best way for you to go. If you're not in one of those spots, there's other options out there, and that's why we're another vendor to take a look at. Last slide, please, Jeff. So quick overview in terms of Smart Deploy infrastructure, and Jeff will jump in and show you here. On one side of the spectrum, you have the Smart Deploy IT admin console. It's a basic set of tools you install on a computer. It can be a desktop, server, laptop, whatever you want. That's your IT tool set to build out your deployment packages and all the assets that you need to use Smart Deploy. The product's completely hardware independent, and we give you clever ways of uniquely managing each stack of the device. So whether it's the OS layer and the device driver layer, whether it's the application layer or the user data layer, we give you efficient ways of ensuring that a user's information works perfectly on any device they happen to be using. We can do all of these things completely offline, which has been important. Some of our very first customers required dark site support. Use your existing infrastructure. As Russell mentioned, a lot of customers still like to use their own server hardware and infrastructure and on-prem gear, all the way through third-party cloud storage providers. So very flexible, use it the way you like it, simple, easy, and intuitive, and we hope you take a look at it. So that's it for me. I'll pass it on over to Jeff, and he can show you what the thing looks like.
All right, thanks, Spencer. I'm gonna activate my camera here. I'll jump to my demo box. We'll jump into it. So what I have here is I have just to give you a frame of reference here. I'm on a machine where I have my console, and I have a virtual machine we're going to use as part of my demo here. So the coolest part of the console is the activities section. That kind of, even if you're really new to it and you don't know exactly where to go, we kind of lay it out for you to say, look, okay, well, I want to reimage devices, so you can click this tile, and then it walks you through. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is build my virtual machine, and then I'm going to capture it, and I get my platform packs and answer file and media and image my stuff and everything. That's what Spencer had mentioned, that being guided. You don't need to come into this having a ton of knowledge on how imaging works. The console just kind of walks you through and make sure that you don't miss anything and you have everything you need. We do have this advanced mode, which I was just in. Once you get more comfortable, you'll want to quick fire. You know exactly what you're after. So let's switch to computer management. I have a couple clients here. They're both virtual machines, which are great for testing, but I have one that's the cloud and one that's local, so it's easy for me to choose the right package or how I want to deploy to any particular system. And we have different information that we can see that may be handy down the road, and I can tell when I last deployed to and the platform pack that was used, and all that stuff is really handy at a glance. And I believe we're going to get some more stuff, information here down the road, but in any case. So if we want to deploy to one of these systems, all we have to do is click and we have all our actions. From the same menu, I'm going to deploy an image or an application, or I want to update drivers, or capture, deploy the user state. Everything is in this one simple menu. So deployments can happen, local. When we say where they can happen, the local meaning, Smart Deploy is going to grab your image from a file server on your local network. If it's a cloud, then this system is at someone's house. It's going to connect to the cloud storage and download the image from cloud. Or I can even build media where I want to, like, I have a bare metal machine. I'm just going to stick in a USB drive. I don't want it to bother with connecting to the network. Just take everything that I need is on that USB drive and an image, and it takes no time at all. It gets back up. So in our cloud stores that we support, these 4 right now, it's super easy. When you just click one of these, it brings up a browser and asks you to log in, and then you're set. Even if you use two-factor authentication, it's fine. You don't have to worry about two-factor authentication on the endpoint, because it encrypts and saves that login token that it can use. And what Smart Deploy does is it creates a folder in your cloud store. So if I were to browse through the web app, I'd see a Smart Deploy folder, and in there, all of my Smart Deploy objects would be neatly organized into the folders. And so if you ever go and need to clean up, it's all in one location. So how do cloud clients connect to Smart Deploy? It's actually really cool. Normally, if you have a product like that, external clients need to connect to, you got to jump through hoops. Maybe you're forwarding ports, or you have to some exposure of your host to the internet, which isn't great, right? You never really want to do that. What's awesome about Smart Deploy is when the client starts, it's going to try and find your console host, because when you do a deployment or you install the client, you give it the name of your console host. when it can't find it, it says, okay, I'm off network, and then it switches to our cloud broker service. And it registers and says, hey, I'm client ABC, my console is console XYZ, and do I have any messages or deployments to do? And the cloud service says, no, please stand by. And that client will check in every 5 minutes for new messages. And on the other side, the console is constantly checking in with the same service. Hey, I'm console XYZ, do I have any clients? And the cloud broker service says, yes, you have a new one. And then that's when it appears in our console here. And so if I were to select here and deploy an application or an image, the console gives that to the cloud broker service, which holds on to it. And within 5 minutes, that client checks back in and it says, you have a new job to do. It downloads the message where it has all the information it needs to connect to your cloud storage, download your boot image, start into Smart Deploy, and get your image and do the deployment. And so there's no complication or hoops to jump through with trying to get these machines to connect. And it makes it super, super easy. So platform packs is something we love to talk about because it's really awesome. It makes everything so much easier. If you remember imaging way back, you'd have this is my Dell package, this is the HP package. And well, here with platform packs, all you need is just you have your answer file that points at your image and points at the location of your platform packs. So when you do a deployment, we will go through and automatically find the pack that works for you. And these packs contain all the drivers that Windows needs. So here are a couple packs that I have downloaded. I have this little arrow here indicating that Smart Deploy has updated this pack. And so I can just right click and update, and it's going to go and download my pack and the new drivers. And in turn, in computer management, if I have one of these systems, I can push this new driver pack to them without having to redeploy, and the new drivers will be installed. I can also go and download. So we have a ton of platform packs, but if I have the new X1 Carbon 8th Gen download, click OK, and I can watch the progress here as it downloads. And yeah, and of course too, if you go to download a platform pack and you don't see the model that you need, you can request us to have us build it for you. The same thing with application packs. We have, I've downloaded a bunch of application packs that I like to test with. The same thing with the platform packs. If there's something that you want to download, you can look for it first. Now, we build these application packs based on the volume of requests. We notice a bunch of customers were, of course, requesting Zoom. So we made a Zoom pack and made it available. You can make these yourselves really easy using our wizard, and all you have to do is, here is the installation files. They get packaged in, and you give it the commands to install if there are any specific ones, and they get saved in a file and appears in the console, and we can push that out to a client. So maybe let's see what that looks like. Oops. So I have my client here, and I'm going to deploy 7-zip. And when I deploy my applications, I don't have to do one at a time. If I want to do a couple, I can, of course, install a couple. And it processes them one at a time. And I'll click OK. And what happens is we have a clock that says the job is created. The client will check in, see that it has a new job, and then begin processing it. And the client copies the application pack to the local system, extracts the files, runs the installation command, and once it's done, it cleans up all those files. And so 7-zip, of course, is a very small application, and it just installed in the short time it took me to explain that. This is super handy. You can do this one-off from the console. You can include these in the answer file, and once the deployment's done, it'll process all the installation. This is especially handy for applications that maybe don't work well with sysprep, like antivirus or whatever the scenario might be. Let's see here. Next, that's right. I want to take you to the support center. So as Russell was just mentioning, and Spencer too, I remember working with the Microsoft groups for over 10 years, where part of my job was to go to a group that made this product like System Center, and it was my job to help learn it and then write the documentation for it. Because if you've probably used some of that stuff before, when you get stuck with some of these huge Microsoft problems, you kind of turn to Google and hope you land yourself on a forum or someone who had a similar problem that you could at least use like just half of what they figured out to kind of help you out. Well, I really like having step-by-step instructions, and so that's what I've tried to help, really make forward and support. And so we have our support center here that you can of course browse through all of our documentation stuff. But a great example is if I just want to search for cloud, and the cloud deployment walkthrough. So this is an article that combines a bunch of articles that has step-by-step instructions for you that'll take you every step of the way so you can get through it yourself. You don't have to try and reach out for support if you'd prefer to learn things on your own. And of course, sprinkled throughout the knowledge base and our YouTube channel is all these videos, if you'll pardon my beautiful face. Some stuff, even just because we have step-by-step instructions, sometimes it's just a little bit easier to have someone explain it to you or even walk you through and show you. And it's just, you come away with like, oh, I get it, and then off you go. You don't have to spend a lot of time digging through forum posts and what have you to try and find some code that you missed or a command, whatever. And that is my short demo. We do have another demo, a more in-length demo with Austin, I believe is tomorrow, and you can register for that at smartdeploy.com/demo. But with that, I am going to turn it over to, who's after me?
Heidi.
Heidi.
Thanks, Jeff.
Heidi, no problem.
Thank you for running through all that, Jeff. That was really great information. And I realized
we're too fast.
No, you're all good. We had a lot of great information today, and we're running tight on time. We're over time, in fact. So my apologies. If you need to drop off, we completely understand, and we will send out a link to the recording, including the remaining time that we'll spend for Q&A. So if you need to drop off, thank you again for being here. A couple quick items. If you're interested in trying Smart Deploy, there is a fully functioning free trial at smartdeploy.com/free trial. You can also just go to the homepage and click the download button to get to that. As Jeff just mentioned, there's a more in-depth end-to-end from setup all the way through deployment demo with one of our technical support managers, Austin, and he will be walking through in a live demo tomorrow with Q&A. So smartdeploy.com/demo if you'd like to see more of the product and ask any questions there. And I know some of you are sticking around for this raffle winner as well. So I just want to congratulate Andy French as our raffle winner today. You've won a Smart Deploy Pro Forever subscription for 25 machines. So we'll be in touch after the event. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into Q&A with the panelists that we have here. We have a ton of questions coming through, so I'll get through a bunch. If we don't get through your questions in this session, please feel free to follow up. We'll get an email out to you sometime this week, and your account manager can get you in touch with any of the panelists here to get your questions answered. And we look forward to the opportunity to work with you. So I will jump into a bunch of the questions here. Let's see here, where to begin. Okay, so there's a question. I believe there are CAB files that you can import into SCCM. Does this work the same way as platform packs?
Yeah, in theory, it works roughly the same way. We use driver plug and play for ours, but we don't use those CAB files. We pull the individual files from the driver's websites and compile them into our own packs.
Great, thanks, Alan. And Adam wants to know, would you say that your product, Smart Deploy, can also replace PDQ?
Certainly there's some overlap in functionality there. We're also working to make some of that functionality better as well, so more reporting on software that's installed on a device so that you have more information on where updates are needed and everything like that.
Yeah, at a basic level, it is pretty similar from an application deployment perspective. I don't think PDQ does any device imaging, so they don't really touch the operating system so much. From an install perspective, and their kind of strategy and roadmap is kind of taking them off into the universe of networking with VPN and some other products. So we're kind of doing different dances, but to Eric's point, we do have some interesting overlap in that core application deployment area. Great,
thank you. Adam wants to know, does Smart Deploy have cloud-based have a cloud-based client that can be used, or must all computers executing the images have the SmartDeploy console installed?
So from a management perspective, you need the console installed on one machine minimum. You can obviously have multiple different console servers, but what's really required for an endpoint is the client services installed on it, and that enables all the communication between the console service and the cloud services to get the message, download images, and everything from cloud service providers.
Thanks, Eric. And Josh wants to know, how large of an environment can SmartDeploy be used to manage? We have 5,000 endpoints with 60 plus sites and only 2 IT people. Wow. Can we speak to that in terms of environment size?
I mean, fundamentally, that's really an increasingly common customer scenario for us. You're exactly in the predicament that most of our customers find themselves, which is, we have this job we have to do. We have pressure to stay small. We need better automation. We need better capability. We need to do it the modern way, and that's why we exist. So I think short answer for me, of course, is yes, but defer to my colleagues to give you a little more robust answer. We certainly have customers in that size range as well.
And I think the amount of time that we've been optimizing and using these cloud storage providers and making it be super easy and leveraging Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox or Box to complete these management actions has been really useful, particularly in this, pandemic. And a lot of people went completely virtual overnight, and we've seen our biggest uptick in cloud storage and cloud deployment adoption over this last year. So that's all really encouraging as well.
Great, thank you. Let's see here. I have some questions coming in around licensing. Can someone speak to specifically Microsoft licensing as it relates to imaging computers?
Meaning,
I think it's
probably the licensing of Windows. Yeah.
There's
Yes.
kind of the volume license piece, and then there's using their products piece. And since MDT is free, you could technically get away with being free, but you need to consult your Microsoft licensing specialist, typically at a partner, to get a volume license agreement. A lot of times what happens is customers will buy a product with maybe a laptop with maybe home, and want to reimage it with Pro or Enterprise, and you can't do that. So you're best to get a volume license agreement in place to stay compliant, regardless of the tools that you use. That's still table stakes, and you got to stay compliant with their licensing regulations.
But we also have given customers the advice and insight that is sometimes a surprise that, and you can get a volume license with as few as like 5 devices. Isn't that right? It can start very small and inexpensive. You don't have to get 1,000 licenses or something like that. So don't let sort of the terminology frighten you into thinking this is some giant commitment of some kind. It really is more a label that they've attached to this that would give you the rights to do this the right way. And we can certainly ping our support. We can give you more feedback and insight on that.
Especially if you're going pro to back to pro, and a lot of customers will reimage those devices just to get back to a clean baseline and not have any of the bloatware, and like they want control over the device and ensure it looks and feels the way they like it, right?
Yeah, we do have a video that explains this in better detail. Customers are often surprised to learn that they're technically not allowed to use their OEM media that came with their Dell to make their image, and then they get hung up trying to use the product keys that are baked in the firmware or the board or whatever. But then they're shocked because they think, oh no, I have to buy 1,000 more Windows Pro licenses when you don't. But yeah, we if you in our knowledge base and on YouTube, we do have a video. I explain it in greater detail, and there's links that you can reach out and get that problem solved if it's a problem.
Thank you. Jeff wants to know, or Jeff submitted a question. He said, from the K-12 education perspective, this seems great, SmartDeploy seems great, but cost is a concern with limited funds. Is there a good comparison of your software versus SnapDeploy, which is about 1/3 the cost, was what he said, but less friendly features? maybe talk a little bit about specifically the education industry, which happens to be our largest industry.
Sure, we do have special pricing and discounting for education. We love to work with you in any capacity that it makes sense. My best recommendation is ping sales@smartdeploy.com, and one of our reps will do their best to make the product be as competitive as we can for you. We'd love to have you as a customer, of course, and you know, our goal is not to have the product be so expensive that you can't use it, but also we have to pay to build and support and make this thing too. So it's not free, but we don't want it to be overly expensive either.
Great.
So anyway, the short version is special pricing for nonprofit and education. Contact sales at smartdeploy.com, and we'll work with you to do the best we can.
Great. And I have a question that says, can I use Intune and Smart Deploy together?
Yeah, certainly you can. And you know, you can use it for different pieces of the puzzle, right? As Russell was kind of detailing, you can use the MDM features of Intune and the deployment features of Smart Deploy. You can use app deployment features of both. There's definitely a cause for that. And, you know, if you want to talk through your specific scenario, we'd love to chat with you.
Great. And we still have a bunch of questions, but I realize we are way over our time we were intending to spend today. So I'm going to go ahead and call this for today. And if we didn't get your question answered, like I said, a sales rep will reach out to you just to confirm that, you know, you have all the information you need. They won't hound you too much, I promise. But feel free to reach out to them if you have any unanswered questions that you would like to get more information about. And they, of course, have full access to any of the panelists you see here, and we'll get you your answers that you're looking for. Again, if you're interested in learning more, joining this live demo tomorrow with Austin, smartdeploy.com/demo is a really great way to get a little bit better understanding. Jumping over to YouTube and watching some of Jeff's product walkthrough videos are also another great resource for you. So thank you again for joining us today. We hope you found this useful, and have a wonderful day.
Bye.